This week, we're trying to turn an unexpected harvest into food we can actually use before we lose it completely. We've got way more than we planned for, not enough time to deal with it, and we're going to be preserving it a few different ways to make it last. The problem is that we need to work with only the ingredients that we have on hand, so it's definitely going to require some creativity to make sure that it turns out well. Our high tunnel is a huge mess right now. A couple weeks ago, I started to pull out weeds, and some of them are just volunteer plants, and I realized as I was doing that I didn't want the volunteer plants that I was pulling out to go to waste. And I didn't really have the bandwidth to preserve everything right then. So I decided to just hold off and wait. And now we are finally ready to clean up this tunnel and preserve all the things that we pick. One of the main things that we are going to be harvesting today is celery. I grew celery last year. It's one of the first things that I tested out growing from seed. And celery seeds are so tiny that a lot of them just dropped onto the ground and they just all came up in this one spot. I transplanted some of them over to a different area, the ones that I wanted to keep, but there are too many right here and I really just need to pull them all out. And I don't want them to go to waste. And we also have some cilantro that we need to preserve in here. We have dill and we have spinach. So we actually have a lot of things that we're going to be preserving right now at the end of April. I planted strawberries on this garden bed about 4 years ago. The strawberries now, they are looking tired and they're not producing very well. I'm so impressed with people who can keep their strawberries in one place for years and years and years and just renovate the bed. That does not work very well for me. Luckily, I had the foresight to take some of the runners from the strawberry bed about 2 years ago. I planted them in our new tunnel over there and they're producing very well. And now, in order to make the most of this space, we need to pull out the strawberries that are here and plant something else.
Okay, 'tis the season for horse nettle. We have a ton of this stuff right now. Becky hates picking it because these tend to prick her through her gloves, but my leather gloves, they don't penetrate that. And I pick closer to the base where it hits the ground and there's a lot less thorns there. So that's what I'm gonna be doing most of the day. Ooh, here's a good one.
So we're working our way through the celery here. We are just pulling up the little ones with the roots attached because we plan on replanting in this area soon. And we're cutting off the top parts, putting them in one bucket. So we're separating out the smaller ones versus the larger ones are going to go in a separate bucket. We're going to have them for two different uses. So we're just separating them out right now.
Oh yeah, these are easier to...
Initially, when I saw all this celery come up as seedlings, I was pretty excited because I thought, okay, I can just replant all this celery. Then I realized it was way more than we needed. So after replanting what we wanted for the year, the rest of it we just let sit there, as I mentioned, because I just didn't get around to it. So it actually got quite a bit bigger than I anticipated. And one of the biggest surprises was how much celery we actually harvested in the end. Stay tuned for that because we're going to weigh it in a second, but it was way more than I thought. And I'm really glad that I didn't just throw all this in the compost because it is a lot of food. So we washed all of the celery, and then while I was outside, I decided to separate out the celery stalks from the celery leaves on the bigger ones only. The ones where the celery is really small, we just kept that all together. So now we're gonna go over and weigh all the celery and see how much we got. That's 16 pounds, so it's 11 pounds without the basket. This one is 13 pounds. 13 and a half, actually. 9 pounds, yep. And 21 pounds. It was 4 pounds, and then 21 pounds, and I need to all write them in my notebook. Grand total for the celery is 45 pounds. Of course, a good portion of that is all of the leaves on the celery, which we don't eat just plain. The leaves can be a little bit bitter and fibrous, but we've come up with some creative ways to use them so that they don't go to waste, and we'll show you that in a minute.
So yesterday we finished harvesting all the celery, and so Becky has that inside and she's getting ready to start preserving that. While Becky's in there, I'm out here doing some finishing touches on the fence. I have 2 custom gates that I need to build. Becky drew up a sketch of an exact gate that she wants, and so I am tasked with making that to her spec. It's gonna be fun. So these 2 gates that I'm doing are 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet square. So they're legitimately square gates. That makes it really easy to do my cuts. I just need 6 boards that are 5.5 feet long. And then I'm gonna lap joint the edges so that they hold better. And so it takes a few cuts to do that. I need to use the handheld miter saw to make a lot of cuts, chop out that excess, and then smooth out that joint so that when I put them together, it's gonna hold really good. Last year, we got a Jackery Home Power 3600 Plus. We initially got it as a backup power solution for our house. It's been a great long-term investment for us because in addition to using it as backup power for our house, I find myself using it more and more for projects around the homestead. I'm getting these gates built out here on my driveway. I don't have a fancy shop yet, and so my tools don't really have a set place where they always are so I can use them. So I tend to just roll them out here out of the garage, set them up on the driveway. In the past, when I would do projects, I ended up spending way too much time pulling out extension cords, running lines, tripping over them, and constantly unplugging and plugging in the tools that I needed at the time. It was a real pain in the neck. I really just wanted to spend more time doing the actual project. I love how many tools I can have plugged into this at one time. I've had my table saw, my circular saw, my miter saw, and my router all plugged into this and running perfectly fine. If you're interested in a Jackery power unit like ours for backup power for your house and to finish projects that you have as well, check out the link in our description to learn more. One quick tip on how to take lumber from the hardware store and make it not look like lumber from the hardware store is just simply rip off the edges so you're left with this, and then you end up with boards that look like this with kind of a nice sharp edge instead of those rounded edges that you get on 2x4s. So those have their place, but if you want a good, clean, finished look, go with square edges. Oh, there we go, okay. Peace. Now that I'm finished with one of these gates, I'm gonna head inside and help Becky with the celery. A good way to use up a lot of the smaller celery stalks, which we have a ton of, is to make vegetable stock. It happens to be one of my favorite smells in the whole world too. So I'm gonna head in and help her with that.
Last night we finished washing all the celery, so that's ready to go. This morning I prepped everything else that needs to go inside this veggie stock, and I am using the recipe from the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. I am following this loosely because I don't have everything that goes in this recipe. However, this is one of those places where I have a strong understanding of the why behind canning. So I know that I don't need to be exact on this recipe. It's a pressure canning recipe and all of the vegetables are gonna be strained out of it. So now we're gonna add everything to the pot. So I have 6 pounds of a combination of parsnips and carrots that I'm gonna add to my stock pots. I have 2 because I'm pretty sure with the amount of vegetables that I have, it's not all going to fit in one. So we're gonna add a little bit more than half in this one just because it's a little bit bigger, and then the rest in this other pot. We do not have any bulb onions right now other than freeze-dried, and I really don't wanna use my freeze-dried onions because we have so many green onions. So I'm gonna put these half and half in each pot. We had some mushrooms for a different meal that we didn't end up using, so I'm gonna put them in this as well. I have some dried tomatoes that have been in the pantry for probably 4 years or so, and I haven't used them mostly because we have a freeze dryer now, and I just prefer those over these dried ones. And also, we just use mostly canned tomatoes. That's like our first choice. So this is gonna be a really good place to use these dried tomatoes because it's just gonna take out the flavor. So we're gonna put some of these in each of the pots. This is not the time of year when we have peppers, so we're gonna use some of our freeze-dried peppers in our vegetable stock too. Next, we're gonna add some garlic. These are whole cloves and they're from last season. They're still good. These are soft necked. We still have a few other things we're gonna add, but the last big thing of veggies is all of this celery that we picked that inspired us making this vegetable stock. And I'm actually really glad that we're making it too, because it's a good way for us to use the parsnips as well. So we're just gonna add a big bunch of this to each pot and try and get out anything that looks bad here. It's gonna be very celery-y, but that's okay. The recipe calls for tomatoes. We don't have any fresh tomatoes right now. So I have some straight up tomato juice, and I'm gonna add a little bit to each pot as well. I went out to the garden this morning and I picked a bunch of fresh oregano to add to these. The last thing that we're gonna add is some bay leaves. Then we're gonna add some salt, pepper, and water to fill these to the very top. Then we're gonna put the lids on and let them simmer for a couple of hours. That's good enough, whatever. Then on like low. We originally intended on simmering the vegetables in the water for just a couple of hours. However, we ended up simmering them in the water for a lot longer. So at the end of the night, that's when we ended up draining out all of the vegetables from the veggie stock. And because it was so late, we just put everything in the refrigerator. So now we are ready to actually can our vegetable stock today. And this is going to make a lot, because based on how much I put in the refrigerator, I'm thinking it's gonna be at least 28 quarts of vegetable stock. For the vegetable stock, it is 1 inch headspace, and then I am cleaning the tops with vinegar just like usual. For pressure canning, this is kind of the standard. I was a little bit nervous with this veggie stock because we adjusted just a little bit, so I was thinking the color might be weird, like green or something strange, but it actually turned out really nice. It's a really good amber color, which is actually really surprising because usually for veggie stock you use a lot of carrots, but instead we used parsnips, which are white instead of the orange color. So surprisingly, it still looks really good. We got our first batch of veggie stock in the pressure canner and it's going. We still have a lot more to do. So we're working on batch number 2 now. We've got a second pressure canner here that we will get going outside, but now we're gonna fill up these jars and get this second batch going. If you're new to pressure canning, I would definitely recommend starting out by making veggie stock. This is so easy for a beginner because it's just a short processing time and it's just liquid, so you don't have to worry about air bubbles or food bubbling up and out of the lids or expanding. Also, veggie stock is easy because it doesn't have any of the fat that chicken and beef stock sometimes have. Even if you strain it out, there's still sometimes a little bit left. The reason that I'm mentioning that is because sometimes having fat inside the jars when you're pressure canning, the fat will bubble up and go underneath the lid and make it so the jars do not seal well. So of course, the most likely way that we're going to use this stock is in soups and stews, but we also sometimes use it instead of water to cook rice, quinoa, or any other grains if we want to add a little extra depth of flavor. Another thing we use it for is leftovers. If they're a little dry, sometimes we add some veggie stock before reheating to bring back some of the moisture without just like watering it down. So after we made our first 2 batches earlier in the day, then we took a break and had dinner. And once all of the kids went to bed, I finished up another 2 batches to make 25 quarts total is what we ended up with. And I take off the rings when we're done, wipe everything down with vinegar, then label them, and we store them in our pantry. So it's pouring down rain outside, so it's a perfect day to finish preserving our celery. I'm glad to have all of the canning done. That is always the most time-consuming part of preserving. Now we're on to other ways that we're going to preserve this celery. What I'm going to work on next is blanching and freezing these celery stalks. I will probably end up using these in soups and stews, and we're trying to do more make-ahead meal prep stuff this year. So once we get to that point, we need to prep meals. I will have a bunch of celery chopped, blanched, and frozen in the freezer and ready to put in whatever we need to. When we picked the celery, I separated out the stalks from the leaves. Then right away, I took the stalks and I just chopped them up so that they would fit in a baggie so I could put them in the refrigerator because I knew on day one I wasn't going to be able to get to them. So they're in these 4-inch, 3-inch pieces-ish, and I actually think I'm going to keep them this way. In the past, I have chopped them up really tiny just so I could just pop them into meals as they are and not have to chop them later. But I think I'm going to keep them in these larger pieces because we will get less freezer burn that way. And then when it comes time to use them, we will just chop them up right before we put it in whatever we need. We started out this week hoping to preserve a lot of different things. It turns out we didn't get to very much at all just because we had so much celery that we needed to preserve and take care of. Cilantro is an herb that doesn't last very long, so ours are already starting to flower and set seed, which is not necessarily a bad thing because I'm wanting to save some of the seeds. However, I would like to keep a lot of these greens before they start to get too bitter and bad. So I'm gonna go through and pick all of them right now. We've picked enough cilantro to make what we have planned. We'll come out and get the rest later. This time around, we are not drying or freeze drying the cilantro. We're doing something completely different, and we're gonna show you that right now. What I am making is a cilantro lime sauce, and this is gonna get pureed and it's gonna go into the freezer. So hopefully it's gonna maintain a lot of that fresh cilantro flavor. The recipe comes from this book. It's called Freeze Fresh Meal Prep, and this is from my friend Crystal from Homestead. This is her second book that she just came out with. She has another one where it's just more like preserving vegetables and freezing them. This one is more meal starters and make ahead dishes. And I went through this and there are just so many good things. Last year I made Crystal's strawberry sun jam, and it was seriously one of the best strawberry jams I've ever had in my life. So I know that this stuff is going to be good. Since it's going to make a sauce that we freeze, we are going to freeze it into individual size cubes. I really like these trays because you can easily pop out the cubes. Some trays, they just have one sheet on the back and they don't work very well. So really like these. Crystal says that she uses these cilantro lime sauce little pucks for breakfast burritos or for stirring into cooked rice, which both of those sound delicious. So I'm excited to make this. Our blender can fit 8 cups, which means I can do a quadruple batch. So it says to put 8 cups of cilantro and pack it really tight in here, and then we're gonna add all of the other ingredients as well. I started to pack down this cilantro and then realized I should probably add the liquid in there so that it can get down to the bottom before I pack this with 8 cups so that it can just blend a little bit better. So we're gonna start with some water and then we're gonna add some oil. Next, we're gonna add some honey to this. We grated up some lime zest, so we're gonna add that, and then just a little bit of sea salt, and then we're gonna blend it up. So I just double checked the recipe, and good thing I did, because I realized I was missing a main ingredient here, and that's lime juice. It's gonna help everything blend really well. If I didn't have that, it would not have enough liquid. So I'm glad I saw that before we messed up this cilantro. So we got our lime juice all squeezed, and this is one thing I probably should have added in the beginning, but hopefully it works its way down so that we can get this blended up really nice. Because I was making a quadruple batch and I packed the blender super tight, it took a little bit of coercing to get everything blended together, but it looks great. It's this beautiful green color. So now we're gonna pour it in these cubes. We fit the cilantro lime sauce in about 1.5 trays. I was really surprised at how much this blended down. I thought I was going to need at least 3 trays. Each of these little cubes for these trays, they are about 2 tablespoons. So it's going to be just the perfect size to like pop one of these out and put it in with rice when we do like taco night or burritos or something like that. We're going to cover these and put them in the freezer. And then once they're frozen, we're gonna put them in Ziploc bags. In the past, we've done vacuum seal bags, and then once we open it, then we put it into Ziploc bags, but we figured we would just skip that step this time around because you're just grabbing individual cubes, so it just kind of makes it easier to have it in like a open and close resealable bag instead. One of the things that I forgot to mention is we finished preserving the celery. Last night, Cam stayed up late and he chopped up all of the rest of the little stuff into bite-sized pieces and blanched that so that we could freeze dry it. So it's in the freeze dryer right now and we will package that up. It's always nice to vary up our preserving projects. We started out with a very time-consuming one when we did the veggie stock and followed up with this cilantro lime sauce, which was way easier and faster. So that was a really good ending to our preserving for right now. We will finish the rest of what we have in the tunnel, the spinach and the dill, as we have time. But for right now, we need to head back outside because we just passed our average last frost. And usually around May 1st is when I start planting all of my heat-loving plants like tomatoes and peppers. So we got to get those into the ground and we're going to share all that with you guys next week.